I should have known something was wrong the moment that cabin lights started flickering, even though no one was inside. I rented the cabin because I wanted silence. Real silence, the kind you only hear in the deep woods, far away from cars, neighbors, and the constant noise of the city. I'd been dealing with insomnia for months, and my therapist suggested I'd take a few days somewhere quiet. The cabin looked perfect in the listing. A small wooden place surrounded by pines, overlooking a lake. The owner said it was rarely booked and that I'd have the entire forest to myself. That line should have bothered me, but I was too desperate for sleep. I reached the cabin just before sunset. There was no cell signal for miles, and the dirt road leading there was barely even a road anymore. The trees leaned inward, like they wanted to swallow everything whole. When I stepped out of my car, the air felt colder than it should have been, but I brushed it off inside. The cabin was cozy. 1 bedroom, a small living room, a tiny kitchen. Rustic, but comfortable. There was a fireplace, some old picture frames, the faint smell of cedar. I unpacked, made myself tea, and sat on the porch as the sky turned orange and purple. For the first time in months, the world felt still. But stillness can hide things. Things you don't notice until it's too late. Around 9 p.m., I was inside, reading, when a soft glow hit the window. The cabin next to mine, the one the owner said was empty and locked, suddenly had a light on. At first, I thought maybe I misheard her. Maybe someone else rented it. But as I walked closer to the window, the glow flickered, like an old bulb fighting to stay alive. And the weirdest part, the light wasn't steady. It flicked in a pattern. 2 short flickers. A pause. 1 long flicker. It repeated. Over and over. A chill crept up my spine. Probably just a bad bulb. I muttered to myself, but something told me that wasn't it. I stepped outside for a better look. The night was unnervingly quiet. No bugs, no wind, just darkness pressing in around the trees. The neighboring cabin sat about 100 feet away, partially hidden behind some pines. The light continued, its strange flickering through the window. I stared at it for a long moment, then turned back inside. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was behind that flicker, watching, communicating. I finally drifted off around midnight, but something woke me from a dead sleep. Footsteps outside the cabin. Soft, slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They circled the cabin, once, then twice. My chest tightened, and I held my breath. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare look outside. Then I heard something worse, a quiet tapping on my bedroom window. Not hard, not aggressive, just testing. Tap, tap. I couldn't see anything through the curtain. I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. When the tapping finally stopped, I didn't sleep at all. I just stared into the dark until the sun started to rise. In the morning light, everything looked normal. The fear I felt during the night seemed exaggerated, like my imagination had taken over. But when I stepped outside, I froze. There were footprints in the dirt around the cabin. Large, bare human footprints. They circled the building exactly where I heard the steps. Then I noticed something else. They didn't lead to the cabin, and they didn't lead away from it. They just circled, like the person had appeared out of nowhere. I followed them around the cabin again. Same thing, just a loop. My stomach tightened. The owner had said no one lived within miles. No neighbors, no hikers. I looked toward the neighboring cabin, the one that was supposed to be empty. Its front door was now slightly open, just a few inches. I swallowed hard. Maybe animals got in, I whispered, though I didn't believe that. Still, I needed answers. I walked toward it slowly. The forest felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. When I reached the cabin, I pushed the door open. The interior was cold, musty, and dark. Dust everywhere, no furniture, No signs of life. But on the floor, in the middle of the main room, I found something that made me step back immediately. A lantern. The same soft, warm glow still flickered inside it, in the same eerie pattern. 2 short flickers. Pause. 1 long flicker. Like it was repeating a signal. I didn't touch it. I just backed out and returned to my cabin, locking the door behind me. I tried convincing myself I'd leave in the morning. One more night, then I'd head home. That was a mistake. The woods get different at night. Heavier, darker, like something unseen wakes up. Around 11 p.m., I heard whispering. It sounded like it was coming from the woods behind the cabin. A low murmur, too soft to understand. I turned off all lights, sat in silence. The whispering grew louder, closer. My hands were shaking. I grabbed the fireplace poker and moved toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but I could see the faint outline of someone standing just outside. A silhouette, tall, still, facing the window. I froze. The whispering stopped. The silhouette didn't move. Then something else happened. The lantern in the empty cabin flickered violently, lighting up the entire forest in bursts. 2 short flickers. A pause. 1 long flicker. Over and over. For a few seconds. The forest looked alive with moving shadows between each flash. I stepped back from the window. My heart hammered painfully. And then, the silhouette on my porch moved. Just a shift of weight, like it took a single step closer. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. My breathing turned frantic. I grabbed my car keys, deciding to run, to leave everything behind. But when I opened the front door, no one was there, just darkness, and the smell of damp earth lingering in the air. I should have left. I should have run. But when I got into my car and turned the key, the engine didn't start. It didn't even try. The battery was completely dead. It worked earlier that day. I sat there shaking for a long time before going back inside the cabin. I barricaded the door with a table and stayed awake until morning, when the sun finally rose. I grabbed my bag and started walking down the dirt road. I didn't care how far the nearest town was. I just needed to leave. As I walked past the neighboring cabin, something caught my eye again. The lantern, it wasn't on anymore, but beside it, scratched into the wooden floor, were words I definitely hadn't seen before. Don't turn around at night. He follows light. My stomach dropped. I left without looking back. 3 miles later, park ranger found me on the road. I told him everything. The footsteps, the whispers, the lantern, the silhouette. He looked at me strangely and said, "There's no second cabin out there." I insisted. I even gave him the exact location. He just shook his head. "That land's empty. Has been for decades. A fire burned down the only cabin that used to be there. Back in 1984. My blood ran cold. I asked him if anyone died in that fire. He hesitated. "One person. The owner. They say he tried signaling for help with a lantern. Flickered it 3 times. Over and over. But rescuers didn't reach him in time." My throat tightened. "What about the footprints?" I asked. The ranger just said, "You're not the first person to see things out there." He drove me back to town, and I got in my car the next day with a new battery installed. But here's the thing. Last week, I was driving at night through my neighborhood. Not a forest, not a cabin, just a normal street. I saw something in my rearview mirror. A flicker, 2 short flashes. 1 long flash, faint, but unmistakable. When I slowed down, the light from the car behind me flickered again in the same pattern. I looked closer. There was no car behind me, just darkness, and something tall standing on the side of the road, still watching. It was around 2:30 a.m. when something started knocking, but whatever it wasn't human. My story takes place 5 years ago, during a winter trip my friends and I planned deep in the mountains of Colorado. We rented a remote cabin, the type that looked picture perfect in listing photos, but felt unsettling the moment we arrived. We were 4 people. Me, Ryan, my best friend, Ryan's girlfriend, Emily, her friend. Sarah. The drive itself felt ominous. Snow fell heavily. The forest leaned toward the road like it wanted to swallow us. And by the time we reached the cabin, the sun had already dipped behind the mountains, leaving everything tinted blue and silent. Even in winter, forests make noise, cracking branches, distant animals, wind, but not this place here. The air felt thick, like sound didn't travel the same way. Inside, the cabin was older than we expected. The wooden floor creaked with every step, and there were no neighbors, no cell service, and no signs of other people within miles. Only one thing stood out: a long, vertical scratch that ran from the top of the front door all the way to the bottom, carving straight through the wood like it had been made by something strong. Ryan joked that it was probably a bear, but the scratch wasn't wide like a claw. It was thin, precise, almost like a finger. That night, we warmed up by the fireplace, cooked canned food, and played cards. Everything felt normal until around 12:30 a.m. when the power flickered twice and the fireplace crackled so loudly we all jumped. But after a minute, the power stabilized. We laughed it off. It was the last normal moment we'd have. Around 2:30 a.m., we were all asleep when a loud knocking jolted me awake. 3 slow knocks, each one heavier than the last. Thud, thud, thud. I sat up instantly. The sound didn't come from the door. It came from the wall next to my bed. I held my breath, waiting, thinking maybe the wood was expanding from the cold. Then it happened. A-G-A-N-T-H-U-D. Thud, thud. I quietly got out of bed and walked into the hallway. Right away, I saw Ryan, his eyes wide. "You heard that too?" he whispered. We woke the girls and all 4 of us gathered in the living room. The fireplace was still burning from earlier, giving the room an orange glow. We waited. Then it came again, not on the wall this time, at the front door. Knock, knock. Knock, dot, slow, heavy, deliberate. Sarah started crying, and Emily whispered, "Don't answer it." Of course, we wouldn't. There was no reason for anyone to be out here at 2:30 a.m., not in the snow, not miles from civilization. But the knocking didn't stop. It continued, slow and patient, like whoever or whatever was out there wasn't in a hurry. Ryan grabbed a flashlight and tried to look through the peephole, but the peephole wasn't usable. Someone or something had smeared dirt or ash over it from the outside. We couldn't see anything after about 5 minutes. The knocking stopped abruptly. Silence filled the cabin. Then we heard footsteps, soft ones, crunching the snow. They circled the cabin slowly, 1 full loop, then another dot, then another. Whoever it was walked around the cabin 3 times, almost like they were inspecting it or sizing it up. Every few seconds, the footsteps stopped, and the silence was so sharp it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then they would resume. Sarah whispered, "No animal walks like that." She was right. These were bipedal footsteps, slow and controlled. Finally, after 10 agonizing minutes, the footsteps stopped behind the cabin. We waited for a long time, and then we heard nothing. We stayed awake until dawn, when sunlight finally crept into the trees. Ryan and I stepped outside to check the area. Snow had piled up overnight, but the tracks were still clear. Large footprints, too large for any normal person, circled the cabin exactly 3 times. But something was wrong. To depth, each print sank almost 6 inches deep into the snow. That meant the figure, whatever it was, must have been extremely heavy. And the strangest part, there were no footprints leading to the cabin, and no footprints leading away. Just the circles, like the figure had appeared out of thin air and disappeared the same way. We decided that night we would leave early the next morning. No more staying here. No more taking chances. If only things were that simple. We packed our bags and planned to sleep together in the living room so no one was alone. None of us wanted to admit it, but every one of us was terrified. Around 11 p.m., the wind started howling. Then the lights flickered. Then the fire dimmed. Midnight came. Then silence. We all sat awake, waiting at exactly 2:30 a.m., the same time as the previous night. The knocking returned, this time louder, more. Gressivethud. Thud, thud. The cabin shook with each hit. Emily grabbed my arm, whispering, "It knows we're leaving." Ryan yelled at the door, "Who's out there? What do you want?" The knocking stopped immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the noise then. A slow, dragging sound moved across the porch, like something heavy being pulled. Sarah whispered, "Don't go near it," but Ryan, trembling, raised the flashlight toward the window. We all screamed at him not to move the curtain, but he did. Just an inch, just enough to peek out. The moment he did, the dragging stopped, and then something leaned forward, close enough to fog the glass. Ryan stumbled back, pale, sweating. We were all frozen. He whispered, "There's no face." I don't know how to describe it. There's no face, before any of us could move. The thing outside spoke in a whisper that felt like it came from inside our own heads. "Let me in." We all backed into the center of the room. Sarah was sobbing, Emily shaking, Ryan staring at the floor. The whisper came again. "Let me in." We didn't say a word. We didn't move. Then, after a long moment, the whispering stopped and the footsteps began again, circling the cabin 3 times, always 3. After the 3rd circle, everything went eerily quiet, too quiet. Then, the window behind the couch cracked lightly. Tap, tap, tap. We slowly turned. Something tall was standing close, too close, its shadow stretching across the thin curtains. I whispered, "Don't look." But Emily couldn't help it. She turned, and for just a second, the curtain dipped inward, like something pressed its head against it. She screamed. We all screamed. The thing outside dragged its fingers down the glass. Long, slow, almost curious. Then, silence. We didn't sleep again at dawn. We grabbed our belongings and ran to the car. The moment Ryan turned the ignition, the engine died. He tried again. Nothing. It was like the battery had been drained completely, just like in those horror movies. But this wasn't a movie. We grabbed our backpacks and started walking down the snowy road toward the highway. It was freezing, but we didn't care. We just wanted to get away. We were about half a mile down the trail when Sarah stopped, walking, and pointed at the trees. There were footprints, large ones, following us alongside the tree line, perfectly parallel to the road, matching our speed every step we took. It took 1 too, silently, patiently. It never showed itself, but we felt it watching us when we finally reached the ranger station. All 4 of us burst inside, yelling about something in the woods. The ranger looked exhausted and unsurprise, he said. "You kids were lucky. Most people who hear the knocking don't make it to the 2nd night." We stared at him in disbelief. "What is it?" I asked. He paused, then said, "We don't know, but it comes with the snow. It knocks on cabins. Always 3 times. And whatever you do, you never open the door." We asked if the ranger had ever seen it. He hesitated again. Then he said something I'll never forget. I've never seen its face, but it seemed mine. We rode with the ranger back to our cars, got our batteries jumped, and left without looking back. We never talked about it again until a month later, when Ryan sent me a voice message at 2:31 a.m. There was no talking dot, just knocking dot 3 slow. Knocks dot thud, 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 and then a whisper. Let me in. He lived in the city, in an apartment on the 4th floor. There were no trees, no snow, no woods, no cabin, but somehow it had found him, and now, sometimes, at night, I swear, I hear knocking too. If there's one night I still can't explain, no matter how many times I replay it in my head, it's the night I found a cabin that shouldn't have existed, and something inside it that shouldn't have been possible. This happened last winter. I had driven up to a remote mountain trail for a 2-day hiking trip. I like solo trips. They help me clear my mind, reset, breathe away from work and city noise. I packed light, just essentials, warm clothes, in a small tent. I have been to that area before, but never after heavy snowfall. That weekend, the snow was fresh, thick, and untouched. The trail felt pure, silent, the kind of silence where every crunch of snow under my boots echoed like a gunshot. My plan was simple: hike until sunset, set up camp, head back the next day. But of course, things didn't go that way. Around 3 p.m., clouds rolled in faster than expected, thick gray sheets swallowing the sky. The temperature dropped so quickly it felt like the air itself tightened. I knew a snowstorm was coming earlier than forecasted. I needed shelter, and that's when I saw it. A cabin, a small, wooden cabin, maybe 200 feet off the trail. Here's the thing, I had hiked this exact trail 4 or 5 times. There had never been a cabin here, not even ruins, not even foundation stones. Yet, there it was, sitting perfectly still between the trees. At first, I thought maybe it was a ranger outpost or a hunter's cabin. I just never noticed. But the way it sat there, it felt wrong. The roof was covered in snow. The windows were dark. The wood looked old, older than the forest itself. But I didn't have another option. If I stayed outside, I'd probably get caught in the storm. The strange part didn't hit me until I got closer. There were no footprints. Not around the door. Not near the window. Not anywhere, just untouched snow. How does someone live here without leaving any tracks? I whispered to myself. A chill crawled down my neck. Still, snowstorm coming. I forced myself forward. When I reached the door, the silence was so deep it felt like the woods were holding their breath. I knocked once, knuckles against wood, hollow. I waited. Nothing. So, tried the handle. It swung open. Way too easily. Like someone had just walked inside a second ago. Like it was waiting for me. I stepped in slowly. The interior was dark, but clean. To clean, dustless, untouched. There was a small table, an old metal stovepipe, a cot in the corner, and a single oil lamp. No pictures. No personal items. Nothing that proved anyone actually lived there. Hello? I called out. My voice disappeared into the wood. The walls felt wrong, like they absorbed sound instead of echoing it back. I shut the door behind me. Snow was starting to fall harder. For the next 20 minutes, everything was normal. I warmed my hands, ate a protein bar, checked my map, and tried to convince myself I wasn't trespassing in some weird, off-grid hermit's home. But then, the storm hit hard. Wind slammed against the cabin. Snow whipped sideways. The wood groaned like something huge was leaning against it. I was glad to be inside, until I noticed something strange. The door lock. Old cabins usually have simple latches. This one had no lock at all, just a handle, meaning anyone or anything could walk right in. That's when I heard it. Crunch, snow, footsteps, slow, heavy footsteps circling the cabin. My stomach tightened at first. I tried to rationalize it. Probably an elk, maybe a moose, coyotes, but the steps were too deliberate, too spaced, too human. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They circled the cabin once, then again, then they stopped right outside the door. I held my breath. The handle switched a tiny metallic tap. Then, silence. It was so quiet I could hear my own pulse hammering in my ears. After maybe 10 seconds, something happened that made my skin crawl. The footsteps continued, but now on the roof, slow, walking from one end to the other. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying not to gasp. What the hell? The roof creaked as something heavy paced above me, back and forth, like it was listening, testing. Then dash tapped right above where I stood. I backed away, grabbed my pack, and kept my eyes on the ceiling. For 5 minutes, nothing. Then everything went quiet again. I told myself it must have been an animal, even though every part of me knew no animal walks like that. Around 5:30 p.m., the storm eased a little. Not enough to hike safely, but enough to see through the window. I wish I hadn't looked. Okay. Walked over to check the snowfall, slowly lifted the curtain with 2 fingers. My heart almost stopped because right outside the window, inches away from the glass, was a face, but not a clear face, a shadow of one. The silhouette of a head and shoulders pressed close like someone was leaning in, staring at me. I stumbled back so fast I tripped over my backpack. When I got up again, shaking, I forced myself to look once more. Nothing, no figure, just trees and snow. But something was worse. Still no footprints, not a single track leading to or from the window. My throat tightened. I whispered, "No, no, no, no." I grabbed the lamp and checked the door. Still no lock. I decided right then, the moment the storm slowed enough. I was leaving. It was around 7 p.m. when I finally tried to rest. The storm had calmed just enough that I figured I could make a break for the trail soon. I sat on the cot, lamp flickering. Then, I heard it. A whisper. Inside the cabin. Not outside. Not behind the door. Inside. Behind me. A slow, breathy whisper that slid through the dark. "Stay." My entire body froze. The lamp flickered violently. "Who's there?" I shouted, voice cracking. Silence. Then, from the corner of the cabin, the darkest corner, came the sound of slow breathing. Deep, steady, not mine. I stepped backward until I hit the door. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Run." So did I burst out of the cabin into freezing wind. The snow was lighter now. I could see the trail. I ran as fast as I could, but something made me freeze. Halfway across the clearing, something impossible. Behind me, the cabin had no snow on its roof anymore, and there were no footprints behind me. None from me, none from whatever had been outside. The snow was untouched, perfect, like nothing, and no one had moved at all. I blinked hard, thinking maybe my vision was off. I turned around again. The cabin was gone. Just trees, just white, just empty forest. No building, no roof, no door, no windows, nothing. I felt dizzy, sick. I ran until my lungs burned, until the trail connected back to the main road, until I saw my car. I didn't breathe until I was miles away. A week after I got home, I called the ranger station to ask about any old cabins in that area. The ranger laughed. "There haven't been cabins in those woods for 40 years, he said. "Closest structure is 12 miles from that trail." "No," I told him. "I stayed in one during the storm." He paused, then said something that still makes my blood run cold. "Whatever you stayed in, it wasn't a cabin that belongs here." I tried to tell myself he was mistaken, but he wasn't, because the next morning, a small package was on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single item. A wooden cabin door handle. Old, rusty. The same one I opened that night. Under it was a note. "You left too soon. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories."